Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Teresa Talks. I'm your host, Teresa Cundiff, and I have inspiring conversations with authors, published and unpublished. Today's author is published, and he's back for part two of his interview as we go through his book and talk about what a great story he has to tell in his memoir. Teresa Talks starts right now.
I was standing outside looking at the sky. The sun was shining and the clouds were flowing by. My favorite book in my hand. I opened it and
I'm so excited for you to join me here on Teresa Talks today. Today, I welcome back Travis Sackett. Here he is joining me now. Hi, Travis. Welcome back.
Hi, Teresa. Thank you for having me back on in 2022.
I know. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Yes, Travis's book is called My Life with Karma. Let me show you. There.
Beautiful.
It's an incredible memoir of his story. And I decided on the fly, I'll put it that way, when we wrapped our interview up in December of 2021, that I just had to have him back on because there's so much incredible stuff in his story. And I just didn't want to let it go. I wanted to go through the whole story. And in our prep for today's interview, we've already determined that there's going to be a part three because we're going to try to keep this interview to half an hour, and clearly we're not going to get through all of it. So let me tell you a little bit about Travis, and we're going to just dive right in. Travis Sackett is resilience personified. Having overcome an abusive childhood, Travis went to college to study criminal justice, hoping to become an agent for change. While fulfilling this role, he was jaded by severe corruption in the system. During this time, Travis sustained an injury while training, resulting in an opioid addiction that led him to a life of crime. Through the help of his canine companion, he pulled himself up and out of the mud and began living his life again. And all of that is kind of almost an understatement to the triumphs and the tragedies that Travis has overcome and lived up to as he has detailed and chronicled his life in his book, My Life with Karma. And as we talked about in our last interview, Karma was his steadfast and beautiful boxer dog that he rescued from a tree. You'll have to go back and watch the first interview to learn all about how their beautiful connection came to be. I wish we could recap it here, but we just don't have the time. There's so much we need to talk about. Isn't that right?
That's so true. I say let's just get into it then.
Okay, so we're actually going to pick up when Travis began his law enforcement career. He went to the Fox Valley Technical College Law Enforcement 520 Academy. That is a mouthful, but I wrote it all down. It's also found on page 47. Now, I've been through his book about 2.5 times now. Of course, I read it through because I couldn't put it down the first time. And then I've been back through it with a little more of a scrutiny to write things down that I wanted to talk to Travis about today. So he goes through, he, like you're not in the room, right? So Travis, you go through your training at the police academy. And well, for starters, give us a brief synopsis of of I guess maybe your rose-colored glasses going into your training, and then what it actually ended up being when you were going through it.
Okay, definitely. So I thought basically the academy was going to be almost like a glorified gym class is really kind of how I looked at it. Like I went in like, okay, I'm a big guy, I'm physically in shape, mentally this can't be as hard as my undergrad work. I've got this. Like I went in very confident, very self-assured. The first day I was humbled. I have never been yelled at that much in my life, and I grew up with an alcoholic father who yelled a lot. Um,
Mm,
and it was just every order was barked at us. There was never a time where like you felt relaxed, where you actually felt like, okay, I can sit in my seat, just be myself. No, it was constantly on point, very, very paramilitaristic, very in your face. We're going to let you know how we feel about you and you're going to comply. And if you don't, there's going to be punishments. I know the first day I actually had to do push-ups because my boots weren't shined the way they wanted them shined. Now, I thought for an academy, that seemed pretty extreme. I mean, I could see military, but a police academy on day one, it didn't rub me the right way. And that's kind of how the foot that we got off on. I was just like, wow, I went home after that day and I didn't want to go back. I'm like, I have
mhm.
to get through 520 hours of this, and this is torture. Like I'm clock watching the whole time, just counting down the hours to when I get to leave my seat and to go home. So it was not a great experience by any means. And that's pretty much how my career in law enforcement began, was by getting yelled at.
Well, and it strikes me interesting because it's a Fox Valley Technical College Law Enforcement Training Academy. So it's not even like the Dane County Sheriff's Department Training Academy,
No,
right? So, or the, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do completely, yes. So yeah, essentially what it is, it's a technical college that runs their own academy, because in the
Mhm.
state of Wisconsin, there's only, I believe, two departments that are large enough, Milwaukee and Madison, that they have their own academies. Everyone else kind of not subcontracts, but they allow for the technical colleges to run academies for them, and then they pick their recruits from those academies, or sometimes they have their recruits set out ahead of time and then send them to the academies.
Oh, I see. So then these technical colleges sort of compete with each other to have the toughest grads or whatever it is, or the most outstanding or whatever kind of thing. So it's a little bit of machismo, right?
Oh, definitely. And that's a great way to put it. They really do compete with one another. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't think they do it anymore, but they used to even have the academies compete in like certain games. I think they did away with that a year or two after I graduated.
Ah,
But
okay. So
yeah.
then you go through the academy, and then right out from the academy, you are waiting for your follow-on assignment. Is that correct?
Yeah, so basically, while I was in the academy, I went through the hiring process with the Wisconsin Capitol Police,
Hmm.
and I was waiting for my completion of the academy for the Capitol Police to extend a formal offer to me. So I was pretty much waiting on pins and needles every day. I was checking the mailbox, waiting for a letter to come. This was before, well, it wasn't before cell phones, but not everyone had a cell phone yet. So it was, they were still doing things by snail mail. And I just remember every day I get home from the academy, rush to the mailbox and just hope that letter was there, because I'm like, something has to make all this worth it. And to me, that job with the Capitol Police was going to be worth it. That's what I had worked my tail off for, and that's what I dreamed of. So it was really, it was a very exciting time for me, in the sense that I was always I was always anxious. I was just like always like a little kid at Christmas, Like, when is that package going to arrive? When is this
Right.
going to come?
All
So,
right. So describe for us the day that the letter was in the mailbox. Did you stand right there and rip it open? Did you calmly walk in the house and put it on the table? Tell us exactly what
oh,
you did.
there's no way I made it into the house. I think up the driveway, that letter got opened, and by the time I was in the house, I'm sure I was yelling for my mom, letting her know that I was going to be a member of the Capitol Police. There's no doubt in my mind that I did not wait until I got in the house. Like, I
Oh,
was absolutely elated at the time.
that's so fantastic. Did any of the other of your other classmates get the same assignment?
No, nobody else from my class worked for the Capitol Police. A few were more local based, and then just basically assigned throughout Wisconsin at not at random, but with different departments. So nobody was even assigned to Madison that I went through the academy with.
Oh wow. So then no one else had even applied then to the Capitol Police?
Well, yeah, other people had
Okay.
applied. They had over 300 applicants for the one opening. It was just a matter of nobody from my academy class had applied for the Capitol Police.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's very prestigious then for you.
It was. Like I said, I mean, with the Capitol Police too came the responsibility of protecting Wisconsin's governor. So
Mhm.
that's what had appealed to me so much. The idea of being able to protect someone in that position that basically runs the state
Yeah,
was a dream. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. So.
right. And so then in that position, were you ever assigned to the governor's detail?
I was, yes. I was assigned to dignitary protection at the governor's executive residence. So I worked mostly third shifts, mostly the overnights, and then I worked the other officers' days off because I was the least senior on our unit. So
Yes.
some days or some weeks I would work second, thirds, and first all in the same week. And
Oh,
then I'd also have to come back for special events. So
mhm.
there were times where I was coming in early, maybe 3:30 in the afternoon, and working until 8 o'clock the next morning. That was pretty standard for me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And at this time, no opioids in your life, right?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I
So
was,
you're just a regular guy. You passed your academy and you were just living your dream job, doing your thing, right?
yeah, that's pretty much it. Just a young man starting his career and really just optimistic about everything.
Right. So then it was in that job, however, though, that you suffered um, because you were on the opioids earlier with the injury that you suffered that the doctor prescribed them, but you got off of those basically when your dad died and so forth. But now you suffered the injury. So tell us about that injury.
So during that time, Wisconsin had a lot of protests. We had a
Yeah.
new governor coming in who was eliminating unions,
Hmm.
and that brought up obviously a ton of controversy. So part of my role during that was I was assigned to a logistics team, and part of being on logistics was moving the coolers that basically we had all the officers' food, all the drinks, everything like that. So we had these big giant coolers, and I was one of the only guys big enough that could carry them by myself. So I was like, okay, moving coolers one morning, I bent down to pick it up and twisted just the wrong way and had something pop in my lower back. Um, I wasn't sure how bad it was. I just knew that almost instantly I felt the pain all the way down into my foot and then come right back up and like shoot into the back of my head. And I was like, "Ooh, something structurally is not right."
Mhm.
Yeah. I finished out my shift basically just like any other one, and I didn't go to the doctor for about 2 days. I just did the ice, rest, some elevation, tried to take the pressure off, and that was what I was hoping would cure it. And when it didn't, I went to a doctor.
Right. Okay. So then I guess this trip to the doc, he prescribed you the oxy, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I believe at first it was 30 days, and then eventually I was re-upped for an additional 90 days.
Right. And then the book, that's when you say it's that 90-day script that really digs you in
That's
and gets you.
yeah, definitely. That's the one that caught me. That's where I started developing a real relationship with the drug where all of a sudden I wasn't functioning without it. I was clock watching while I was on it, just looking to see when I could take my next dose. Really just getting deep in bed with this drug and not realizing how deep it was. And the reason I say that is because I always looked at it like I seriously thought it was a harmless drug because it was something that was prescribed by my doctor. Like
Right.
I never looked at it as something that could be an issue. I just thought, okay, as long as I take it as prescribed, I'll be okay. Like there shouldn't
Mhm.
be any problem. And that couldn't have been further from the truth.
Right. But that's what happens. You trust your doctor, and of course the doctors trust the drug reps who trust Purdue Pharma, and yeah, and so that's what made the whole thing so insidious, as you know, as the years went by with that drug and all the people who were addicted and took it as prescribed and lost their lives.
Exactly.
So yeah, so it's an incredible thing that you've been able to rehab from the drug. Um, but we go from there. So your addiction becomes well ensconced in like your everyday life. Um, we're going to skip over the events that left you leaving your job at the Capitol, because we can't talk about everything in the book because we want people to read it.
Yes.
But it's quite a whole long scenario of a chain of events that brought that job to a close. And then you take a job with the University of Wisconsin uh, University Police. Dun, 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 yeah, the University of Wisconsin at Madison, which is
Yep.
the main one, the main campus, the police
Yes, that's
department.
correct.
And you're working there for not even very long, and you become the supervisor.
Yeah, so I promoted when I left Capitol Police because it was still within, it was another state agency. So I technically promoted to security supervisor leaving Capitol Police. So it was an increase in pay, increase in responsibility, and something that I felt ready for at the time. I really kind of saw it as a stepping stone, like the next opportunity in hopefully a long lasting career. And that did not turn out to be the case because of my addiction to Oxycontin. It pretty much derailed that career before it even began. I'll say that the Wisconsin, I mean, not the Wisconsin Capitol Police, but the UW Police, when they hired me, they got a warm body, but they didn't get the full version of me. They got a
Mm,
broken version that was addicted to a substance. So,
right, right. The so then um, so that was so then in chapter 18 you entitled it Under Arrest,
that's correct.
because on June the 19th of 2012 you were arrested. So tell us about that day and tell us, what was your crime?
Okay, so the day began like any other, essentially, except for I showed up to work and I was called into my lieutenant's office. And from that point, it just all went downhill. I was greeted by two Madison police officers, along with a plainclothes officer that I assumed to be a detective. and they dropped a file probably an inch or two thick on the desk in front of me and said, "We've been tracking you for a while, and we know that you're involved with stealing credit card information." Essentially, I had been stealing credit card info from the gym where I worked out at, and I was redistributing that, and I got caught. Each time that I did that came with two separate charges, two misdemeanors. The first was a misdemeanor charge for the credit card theft itself, and the second was a misdemeanor charge for false representation. So it came out to a total of 14 misdemeanors, um, seven each time, and that's how I ended up basically being charged. I did not speak at the time about what I was doing. I essentially told the officers that I needed to talk to a lawyer before I was going to share any information with them. And they promptly placed me under arrest and took me to jail. So I was marched right out of my lieutenant's office at UW Police Department through through the offices, past all the officers that had gathered to see what was going on outside, and packed into the back of a squad car and taken away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, and when we come back, Travis is going to tell us what he did with all the pills that were in his car the day that he got arrested. So we'll be right back.
Teresa Talks is a new kind of interview show. I'm your host, Teresa Cundiff, and I won't just be interviewing authors who write books. I'll also be interviewing authors who will be writing books. We will have fun and you will be informed and entertained. And you won't want to miss Teresa Time, where I share what's on my heart. Teresa Talks is brought to you by Wordy Nerd Media and distributed by Legrity Media. Teresa Talks can be found on all these platforms, on these smart TVs, and wherever there is internet around the world. I'm excited for you to join me on Teresa Talks.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking to Travis Sackett about his fabulous memoir called My Life with Karma, and Karma is his precious dog that literally saved his life. So when he was arrested that day at the UW-Madison police station, he had OxyContin in his car because he was heavily addicted to the drug, and it was running his life basically. And he was removed from the police station at UW, taken to the police station downtown, and then you walked back to your car, right, Travis?
I did. So I was booked downtown at Dane County Jail and released. And essentially, I needed time, time to figure out. My world was spinning at this point in time. I mean, I had just been arrested at work and really didn't know what do you do next. So I walked from the jail back to my car, And the whole time I was thinking to myself, okay, I have a plethora of pills in my vehicle. What am I going to do with these? Do I have one last hurrah? Do I go out that way? And I decided pretty much on my drive home that I was going to dump them. As soon as I got home, I actually had more pills at my house too that I had to get rid of. So I decided that they were going to go down the garbage disposal. And that was basically where I started to make my stand with sobriety. It was, I had to get rid of these pills, and that was the first thing that I did. So when I got home, they went in the garbage disposal along with the other hidden pills that I had, and I went on from there.
So I have to ask you, did your wife ever suspect your drug addiction?
Well, she told a best friend of mine that she thought I had problems with caffeine and possibly alcohol. So I don't think she ever suspected. I put on a lot of facades, and
Mm.
growing up with an alcoholic father, I learned a lot of ways to hide things. So essentially, I kind of repeated some of the behavior that I saw as a child. And then the next thing I knew, I was doing a lot of the same things, lying about my use, how often, when, where, about the amount of pills that I had, just constantly lying to cover my tracks. And
And how did you make up for like the missing money that you needed to buy your pills? I mean, I assume you had like a joint checking or whatever. How did you cover up the money?
by selling things. Like I sold, for example, I had a Star Wars collection when I was a child that I had kept. So I had all these Star Wars figurines that were from the late 70s,
Mhm.
early 80s. So I ended up selling those. I sold a vintage Nintendo with about 80 video games. Pretty much just anything that I could come across that was mine at first. That was the first thing I did. And then once I ran out of things that I could sell that were mine, that's when I began stealing.
You began stealing.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
but it was so just stealing the credit
The
card
credit card
like that.
information. Yeah.
But
Yes.
okay. But okay. Because I think stealing, I think, you're going in your friend's home and you're stealing like the,
Oh, no.
the girl's jewelry and stuff like that. No. So
No, nothing like
the
that.
credit card information. Okay. Ooh, oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So, ooh, there's so much to talk about. We've already been on for quite some time. So we're not going to get this in 30 minutes, but we're going to keep talking. So in the Dane County, Wisconsin jail, in the book, you talk about how the prison population divides itself, and it's not along racial lines like all the prison movies we've ever watched want to divide it. In that particular jail, tell us how it divides itself.
Okay, so it's interesting. It actually divides itself by gambling. And the way people gamble in jail is you have commissary, and essentially you can buy things like chips, soap, all kind of the essentials that you need. And
Mhm.
then what I would consider are like luxury items in jail, which would be like, cookies, any kind of thing that you can't get from jail food, but you would want, you can pretty much get on commissary. So guys will use that, and they'll basically use it like poker chips, and they'll bet on anything from card games to football games on TV to pretty much what the weather's going to be like the next day. I mean, it's a very intense network of betting, and yeah, I chose not to get involved in it because the first day I was in jail, I saw a fight, and it turns out the fight was over 2 bags of chips that the guy couldn't pay his bet for jail. So
Oh my
it
goodness.
was just I immediately looked at betting as something that this is just going to get me in more trouble. Like, there is no way I want to become involved with this. So as opposed to betting, I passed my time by drawing. My mom was an art teacher and I could draw fairly well. So it started, I would draw for guys like if they needed a card sent home, they'd be like, well, can you draw some flowers on it? Something like that. Well, of course, yeah. And then it became tattoo designs. So once they saw what I could draw, then it was like, well, can you design this tattoo for me? Can you design this one? And of course, I did it. And in return, I received commissary items from guys. So now I had chips, other things like that coming in, and I wasn't paying for them. It worked out all right. So
Right.
yeah, exactly. So it was a way for me to survive, to meet my needs, and also cover up the fact that I was a police officer, because I really couldn't go around saying, oh yeah, what did you used to do? Oh, well, I was a cop. That's not going to get me very far in jail.
Yeah.
So they pretty much knew me as the pod artist. So anyone who needed anything in our pod drawn up, they come to me. And that's kind of what I did for the 3 months I served in jail.
Well, and one of my questions was, tell us about the two things you did the most in jail, and one of them was doodling, and what was the other one?
Well, the other one, I spent a ton of time reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, I read everything I could get my hands on. Reading for me was an escape. It was a way to just take my mind and go somewhere else, even though
Yeah.
physically I was stuck in
Mhm.
jail. So
Right. Well, because it is, it would have to just be so much mind over matter if you can just let your mind escape, right? I mean,
exactly.
yeah, it's like why I never watch the news, because it's like it's all bad news, and it's like, and that's why I don't read books about horror movies, or horror, or like rape or murder or whatever. Why would I do that? I can watch the news and get that. I want to read stuff that is edifying and uplifting, and like your memoir, it does have like the bad things that have happened to you, but how you've triumphed and how you've overcome, and to be able to sit here and talk to you about it, to ask you questions, to learn more about it. It's the triumph of the human spirit. It's it it makes me feel to be able to talk to you and bring you on the show and to spread the word about your story makes me feel like I am contributing to a greater good in some way to tell your story. And that's why it's like, I don't want to let you go with regard to just one interview or even two interviews. I don't want to let you go until we've been all the way through your book to completely tell your story. And that's why I know we sort of, I mean, not even get in the weeds. It's like every bit of your story is worth talking about and stuff, because it's fascinating that you had a commodity to barter with because you're an artist. And it's like you could probably still be an artist, even though you're like super busy now that you're a writer, right?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. And I look at it too, like every time I talk about my story, I help crush some of the stigma surrounding addiction, because it's so rare, especially like if you and I were being real with one another. How often do you hear a police officer come out and actually say, "Look, I had problem with alcohol, or I had a problem with whatever it may be." It just doesn't happen. And I feel like it's so important that we're real about that aspect of it, because yes, we do police the community, but in the same sense, we're part of that community. So as members of the community, I think it's only fair to say, okay, if we have a problem, let's address it and not try to hide it or hide behind the badge. It's just so important to me that it gets talked about. Like, I mean, I never woke up and said I want to be a drug addict. I did wake up and say, I want to be a police officer. I want to protect the governor. So just to see how twisted that got and how quickly that got twisted, I think it's so important that I share my story so that others can realize just how quickly things can unravel, especially when you're talking about a drug like Oxycontin.
Right. And to your point, I don't think there's ever been a person that is stuck in the cycle of addiction that ever thought when they were a little boy or a little girl and they wanted to be a firefighter or they wanted to be a nurse or whatever. Nobody ever said, I want to grow up and be addicted to this, mind altering drug. Nobody ever said that. And I feel like that so much as society we want to paint people that are stuck in that cycle of addiction with that broad brush, that if they were just stronger or if they had more willpower or if they and I feel like I'm so guilty of doing that as well. And it means so much to me to get to know you and learn more about your story, but also to your point about the police officer that might struggle with alcohol or whatever. I feel like, and it's like a lot of people, they don't want people to think less than of them because they struggle with something, but everybody has something about themselves that they don't want other people to know. So the fact that you are so real and that you're out there with your story and being so vulnerable in your book about so many things, it's incredible. And it is such an inspiration. I just want everybody to read your book. That's why every time I see that you've posted something, I'm like, share, read this book. It's a great read. You can't put it down. It's a page turner. You read it in one sitting. I mean, every time. So I'm so grateful that you come on Teresa Talks and you share your book. And I feel like we're kind of at like a stopping point. But one other thing that I do have too about your time in jail. Well, two points, and then that'll finish up this page of notes for this interview. Is
Okay.
that you were the jailhouse artist, and you did reading, but you also note in the book that you weren't one of those guys that called home every day. Tell us why you didn't.
No, so essentially, I saw too many guys fall into the trap of constantly being on the phone and worrying about things that they could not control, like what was going on back at with their families, like what happened with their daughter at school that day, things that you want to be present for, but when you're not there, it can really fall and make, like, I saw some guys get so depressed, and one even actually attempted to hang himself with a shower curtain after a phone call. And it's like, I did not want the phone to have that much power over me. I just looked at it like, what's outside is going to be outside. Right now I'm here, and I need to find a way to survive this, to make the best of what jail has to offer, just so that I can get through, and I'll worry about the outside when I'm actually on the outside.
Right.
And I think that's, for me, that was one way just to really, like I said, survive, by not getting so caught up in everything that I couldn't control.
Right, because you have to protect your mind. I feel like that's really what it's all
Exactly.
about.
It really is.
And then in the book, you talk about how Karma reacted when you got to see her for the first time, when you got out of jail, when you were in there for those 90 days, but you didn't talk about how you reacted. So I want to know, how did you react when you got to see Karma for the first time after the 90 days in jail?
Oh, man, I know I broke down. I started to cry. Like, she was sitting there wiggling, shaking, jumping up and down, like,
Like
and
dogs do.
yeah, exactly. And I just remember picking her up, giving her the biggest hug, and just holding her and feeling all the little vibrations from her wiggly body, and just being like, okay, this is what I waited to come home to. This is
Yeah,
what I needed.
yeah. It's just a love like no other.
Exactly.
Dogs are
It's
so
that
they're so
unconditional
real
love.
and raw. Yeah, and how they love. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It really is.
Oh, and that's such a great note to end on. There's still so much more that we're going to talk about. So Travis is going to come back every month. So this is January, so he'll be back in February, and he'll be back in March, and he'll be back in April. He'll be back until we've talked about all there is to talk about in his memoir, because you'd think that the book was this thick because there's so much packed in this book that has happened to this man in his life that he has been so willing to share with everyone. It's going to be more than a movie. It's going to be like a docu series, something, 8 or 10 episodes telling this man's story, because it's so incredible. And I'm just happy to be here and sharing his story with my audience. Travis, thank you so much for taking the time to come on Teresa Talks and to talk with me again. I just love spending time with you. But as you know, no one gets away without the lightning quiz.
Yep.
And we've begun season 3 today. So I have a whole new bank of questions for you.
Okay.
Question 20. So you get to be my first victim. I mean, my first guest that gets to answer this. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Complete this sentence. Everything's better with.
Chocolate.
Do you prefer driving or flying?
Ooh, driving.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a cook are you?
7.
What's your best time of day to work?
Probably around 8 to 9 o'clock at night.
Who's your favorite author?
Oh my goodness. Right now, Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, fine dining, casual dining, or fast food?
Casual dining.
Name one of Santa's reindeer.
Rudolph.
Are you currently working on another book?
So I'm actually just in the conceptual stage of it. So I'm not going to give anything away yet, but the next time we talk, I'll talk more about that.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Oh my gosh. Do you have a favorite quote, and can you recite it?
Oh, I do not actually. There's nothing that comes to mind that would be my favorite quote.
Okay. Beach house, mountain house, or lake house?
Beach house.
Who's your favorite hero or protagonist?
Oh, wow. I'll go Luke Skywalker in Star Wars.
How long did it take you to write your first book?
Almost 2 years.
How did you feel when you held your book for the first time?
Almost as good as I felt when I held Karma coming home from jail. It was almost that good.
What's your favorite football team?
The Dallas Cowboys.
You're supposed to say the Green Bay Packers.
I know what I'm supposed to say, but I'm not gonna lie to you. So it's the
I
Cowboys.
don't know what to do with you. Okay, we'll fight about that later.
Okay.
Is there a nickname your parents or friends used to call you that's PG-14?
Trapper John MD is what my dad used to call me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite carb? Bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes?
Oh, pasta hands down.
Okay. If you could ask God one question, what would it be?
Ooh, what is the meaning of life?
What's your ideal outside temperature?
Sunny and 79.
Have you ever been to New York City?
I have, yes.
And who would play you in the movie of your life?
Oh, we've been over this one. Bradley Cooper for sure.
Yes. I kept that one from last season's question bank because I liked it so much. I love that one so much. So I kept it. So that's the only one I kept. So that concludes our episode today. So, Travis, thank you so much. And we'll get you on the books for February. So,
Perfect.
thank you for sharing your time with me again. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
Teresa, thank you again for having me on. I look forward to talking to you again in February. It should be great.
Yes, thank you. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
And you
Bye-bye.
can get, well, before we go,
Oh.
everybody, you can get My Life with Karma at Amazon. And don't forget, while you're on Amazon, to check out Travis's author page, where you can read more about him there. And then, of course, the ticker was going. You can and become friends with him on Facebook. So check him out.
Perfect.
And he's on LinkedIn as well, because we chat on there also. So there we go. Okay. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me for another episode, excuse me, of Teresa Talks. And also for Travis for hanging with me for for another episode as we're working our way through his book. Here's how you can get in touch with me. You can visit my website, teresatalkstv.com. And you can also email me at teresa@teresatalkstv.com. And let me know your thoughts, ideas, how you're doing. Reach out and say, hey, that'd be great. But I've enjoyed having you here with me today. And I look forward. I can take the lightning quiz off now. Yes, I can. There we go. I look forward to you joining me on the next episode of Teresa Talks. So everyone, have a great evening. My favorite book.